And I thought, why? Why am I putting myself through this for what should be a game? So I've given it up and I'll never go back to it.
Hello, I'm Chris Lisserman and welcome to Sparks, a series by Interactive Workshops. In every episode, we spark something in work and life, from how to spark culture, to how to spark early careers, to how to spark a good office plant, Jono.
Oh yeah, we've got some brilliant office plants.
We're keeping them alive and they're keeping us alive.
I think that we're keeping them alive and they're just helping us be alive. They're not keeping us alive.
I don't know, what about oxygen? Is that important to you?
It doesn't all come from the office plants because there's already some in the
atmosphere. Yeah. Also to our well-being as well.
They're good for our well-being. They're making us feel well.
Exactly. Office plants, they're good. But what else is good is a brilliant guest that we've got on the show today, Jono. Stephen.
Wow, I'm not sure about
the
brilliant, but it's amazing to be here. What a professional setup you've got, first of all, Chris.
Why, thank you, kind sir. Yeah. We are very honoured to have you, and I know that you'll have many, many fans, and you're very well known in YouTube.
Yeah.
But to me, you're a great dad.
Thank you very much.
Not mine. Brilliant company over a football game, but also hard-working content creator.
Wow, I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, we've had some good times together at the Brentford, haven't we?
We've had some great times, but you've also got your own memes.
Yes,
Tastes like promotion.
I have, yes. I mean, that's the thing.
We've got your beer, really, shouldn't we?
We should have had a beer, absolutely. I don't know whether I'm here as Stephen or as Thogdad. That was the first question.
I was going to ask you that. Everyone was asking me, should we say Stephen? Should we say Thogdad? What do you prefer?
Well, it's funny. So, I mean, at the weekend, I went to Reading against Bolton, and I come out of Reading Station, and straight away, there's 20 kids just coming up to me with their cameras saying, Thogdad, can you recreate that Tastes Like promotion with all the cheering in the background? And it's funny. It's beautiful. It's well-intentioned. So I can be what you want me to be.
Oh, well, we're happy to have you here. It's also worth saying that not only are their fans fanboying you from Reading Station, but as you're here, we're also once again filming in front of a live audience.
Hey. Wow.
That tastes like promotion to me.
Yes, yeah. And when I say that tastes like promotion, that's when you cheer.
Yeah.
The Americans.
That tastes like promotion.
Oh, come on.
That tastes like promotion.
Yeah. Okay, try one more time, right? This time with passion, American passion. That tastes like promotion.
Yeah, come on.
That's more like it. That's it. They've woken up.
Stephen, you're a content creator.
Yes.
You're the father of a content creator, but you've also had your own career in business as well. Why don't you tell us about a few highlights of your career?
I'll do that. I mean, I'd call myself a sidekick, really, because that's what I see myself. I mean, my son, Theo, is the main guy. We can talk about him later. But the first thing, the word career. I mean, I question that these days. I mean, in my early days, I went down the sort of the conventional route. I got my chartered accountancy qualification, which might surprise a few people.
One of the most interesting accountants. It's a stereotype, but
it is a stereotype.
Good background.
It is, and obviously Monty Python lampooned that back in the day, but it's actually a sensational business degree. It's like an MBA. I did my time with the likes of KPMG, Pete Marwick, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. I worked in an investment bank for Credit Suisse, First Boston, and that was my life. So I suppose in my 20s and 30s, I had what you could consider a career. And I'd say a couple of highlights were actually being the finance director of a brewery in Russia. Which we built up over 5 years. We built up from nothing. And by the time we sold it to Heineken, we had the capacity to brew about 1 billion pints.
1 billion?
500 million litres.
Wow.
So it was an enormous brewery. And we're not allowed really to talk about Russia these days, which is sad. But in those days, great place to live, great place to work. But also back in the day, when I was about 40, I was the executive chairman of the third largest retailer in Russia.
You say when you were 40. I mean, I thought you were going to become 40 at some point in the future.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Jono is too nice to me. But
look at this sleek racehorse of a man.
I tried to keep in shape. But back in the day, in terms of business, my peak, my highlight was being executive chairman, was running a business with 11,000 employees at a time when there was an economic crisis, when the second largest owner decided he hated the business and wanted to jump on a yacht and go around the world. So I have, in the world of business, done some very, very interesting things. But of course, these days, it's all about that tastes like promotion.
Yeah, but so that's amazing though. So you've gone from what we would all consider a normal job,
yes,
and a career. Now you're heading off to the Brentford Community Stadium, GTech, or Bolton Wanderers, wherever it might be, with your iPhone, maybe with your son, maybe with some 20-something editor or something like that. How did that change come about?
Well, these days I'm just trying to enjoy my life. So back in those days when I was doing those, well, I say 9 to 5, but it wasn't. It was 18-hour days, when you're working for an investment bank or an accounting company. When I was doing that stuff, I was aware I was making money. I was aware how much I was learning about business, finance, and what have you. But in the back of my mind, I always thought, this isn't me. So the concept of a career, of a structured life where I have to do this for the next 40 years, that just wasn't what I wanted to do. So when in my early 30s, my son was born and then my daughter was born, I decided, well, I have to keep working to some extent, but it won't be in the traditional framework. So when I was 33, I'd made a bit of money, but I decided from now on, I choose my hours. I'll do a bit of consulting work. I'll do a few non-executive directorships. And eventually when my son came along, he said, well, we're going to start a YouTube channel. So
I love it.
That was the point when my kids came along. I thought, I don't want to be an absentee dad. I want to be around for this boy and this girl. I want to go along to softball practice. I use the word softball just so the audience understands what I'm talking about. I wanted to be there for my kids. I wanted to be a husband.
You wanted to be a soccer mom.
You know what? And I wanted occasionally to put on a backpack and go to Burma or somewhere.
Yeah.
I wanted to live my life my way.
I love that. It also, I've got like sparks firing off.
Yeah.
Because partly when I went the other way around. I did a few years in big companies, BMW Group and others. Then I went consulting.
Yes.
And then actually worked at Credit Suisse, First Boston, and a few of those other places you mentioned. But then that meant traveling all the time.
Yes.
And then that means I wasn't there for my kids, even though I'd gone into I'm not doing the 9 to 5. So then I wasn't there.
Yes.
So then I thought, how am I going to make sure I am there? Then I thought I'll have to grow the company so that I don't have to go to everything.
Yes.
So ironically, I've got to the same kind of pattern. My kids are a bit younger than yours, but I want to be around. And we talked about family before. It's so important.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have an enterprise with one of my kids. I think my daughter and I could start a farm or something like that. But it must be really fun fusing those two things together.
Yes, sensational. And the really exciting thing happened to me 9 years ago. My son came to me. He was 13 years old, and we were in the corridor at our apartment in London. And he said, "Dad, I've set up a YouTube channel." And I'm like, "Well done, son." And then I'm sort of Googling what is a YouTube channel because I knew what YouTube was. I knew if I want to watch a video from the 80s, I go on YouTube. So I knew what the platform was. But the idea of a YouTube channel, the idea of a creator, that a 13-year-old kid or a 40-year-old woman or whoever can create content, because in my day, it was what the BBC or ITV gave you. It was what Hollywood gave you.
They chose what you watched.
Correct. Yeah. So it was 9 years ago, in November, whatever the year was, 2014, with my son saying that my life took a different direction. And actually, interestingly, early on, my son said to me, "I've set up a YouTube channel, Dad. We're going to go to a Bolton game. And your job is to stay off the camera." Yeah, stay off the camera because, my audience of, let's say, probably 1,000 subscribers then doesn't want to see an old man. I'm like, okay, thanks. So my job was to buy the tickets, was to drive down to Eastleigh or drive up to Barnsley.
How did that feel?
That's what you're
there for,
isn't it? That's what you're there for.
Yeah.
You embrace that.
Teenage children, if they're not embarrassed of their parents, then something is wrong. But the funny thing was that very first game, Eastleigh against Bolton, I think I came in with one comment, and Theo's subscribers were like, "Oh yeah, your dad, we quite like him. Bring him in." So that was Theo. He's a really smart businessman. He's only 22.
Very smart, isn't he?
The next video, he said, "Dad, the feedback is that we want Thogdad in." I said, "Well, Thogdad, is that my new name?" And it has been ever since.
Here we are. That's why you're working out in the gym now. You've got a professional and personal image to keep up.
I do.
An alter ego.
Style consultants, makeup artists.
I'm not sure about style
Botox,
consultants, but
the whole lot. Yeah.
So now you're creating your own content as well as Theo.
It's primarily Theo. I did set up a channel, and during sort of the COVID times, I practiced actually editing and what have you, but my channel is pretty much dormant. So Theo's channel is, of course, called Thogdad. It's got 1.55 million subscribers. In an average month, he might get sort of 10 million views of long-form content, 30 million views of short-form content. Big. He's one of the biggest football YouTubers in the world, full stop. And I'm his sidekick.
How much of your time, so you said you want to do life on your own terms, how much of your time, given that football often happens at the weekend, you're traveling, how much of your time and effort is put into the YouTube content and or edit and or prep and or project management. Are you working a 5-day, 7-day week doing that? Or is it a couple of days and then you're just lounging around in Hampstead having a good time?
It varies. I mean, there is a little bit of lounging around, but not as much as I hope for. But for example, we've got a big trip lined up to India in October, November. We're going to go out there for 2 weeks, see a whole bunch of Indian, well, they call it soccer, we call it football. We're going to take in 5 games, 5 cities, and we're going to go planes, trains, and automobiles. So that will be full on in an amazing, fascinating country. And that's really a step into the unknown, because we're known primarily for English football and European football and what have you. So some days Theo doesn't need me. He'll go off by himself. He's off to Miami next week to watch Messi. He's, and I'm not invited for some reason.
Sidekick.
So yes, I'm the sidekick,
Sideline.
which is cool.
But it's great. We talk a lot about how if I was reinventing the world, I wouldn't hire individuals. I'd allow you to hire pairs, partnerships. But like the power of a partnership. Also, when you work with someone a lot, you implicitly know everything about them. You know how they're thinking. You know what annoys them. Chris stayed over at my house last night.
Yes.
But this morning he knows I may want to have my own morning routine, going to work.
Your own thing.
We don't necessarily, it's not locked in to travel together, but that's because we built up a big understanding. Equally, I know how he works. His daughter had their first day at a new nursery last week. It's like, Chris, don't come to work. Just like work from home, do whatever.
Yes.
But there's kind of like a deeper understanding than if you're just a work colleague.
It's a proper partnership, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. And I think that flexibility is important in work and in life. And sometimes the boundaries between work and life, work and leisure are blurred. And that's a beautiful thing. But also what I learned from that moment 9 years ago when Theo said, I've started a YouTube channel, it was one of the first times in my life where somebody else had pulled me in the direction that I was going.
Oh, I like that.
So in the past, becoming a chartered accountant, or going to university before that, moving out to Russia, becoming a finance director, these were all my choices. And suddenly I've got a 13-year-old boy, my son, who has in some ways dictated the course of my life over the last decade.
I love that.
That is fascinating.
Special, isn't it?
That is incredible. I only realized that about a year or two, that sometimes you've just got to let others steer your course.
In the professional coaching world, it's actually similar in improv, but there's the ability it's called go with.
Yeah.
But can you just
Talked
go
about that
with
before, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes.
whatever's happening?
Yeah.
And it's a great thing, isn't it, when someone else takes
Yes.
a lead in something to say, actually, I can go with that, and not necessarily letting go of your own ambitions or your own agenda, but to just follow them.
Yes.
We also, in our teams here, we use the expression "follow me," or I'll follow your lead. When we're running a workshop, when we're facilitating, you get there, you're kind of maybe a bit tense, and you haven't run the program before, and it's a big international client, and you've flown in. You're with your colleague, like M-Link's brilliant at this. You're with your colleague, and you say, "Oh, I haven't run this before. I haven't done this program. I haven't been this client. What do I need to do?" And she just says, "Follow my lead."
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And that's the kind of confidence you can go with.
I'll go with that. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just thank you very much. Yeah, if you take the lead, I'll follow on, and we'll be fine.
Right. But in terms of flexibility, so during the World Cup, we went out to Qatar, and my son actually watched every single game at the World Cup, so broke a sort of a world record by doing that. And we were going out there to sort of support England. We're English, and we were going to go to all the England games, and we thought the most watched videos would be the England vlogs, for obvious reasons. Wrong. Theo started going to he went to every game, but the first Morocco game he went to, he made a video, and it did really well. And the second Morocco game he went to, it was watched hundreds of thousands of times, and people started to come up to him, give him scarves, give him shirts, and by the third game, he was becoming, I'm not even kidding, nationally known in Morocco.
Incredible.
And they had a brilliant story through the World Cup.
And it was a wonderful story, because then they got to the semi-finals. Yeah. They were fourth at the World Cup. The African team that's gone the furthest at the soccer World Cup. And Theo then, a month later, went back to watch the Casablanca derby. It was watched over 1 million times. And that's another example of something completely unexpected. But let's run with it.
Yeah, and that takes us. We're in our Sparks podcast today. We wanted to ask you about how to spark fans and/or content. And for me, this is like a little bit of a dance, and it's sometimes hard to know. Should I be going after fans, or in order to get fans, we just need to do good content. And we could think of this as if we're a YouTuber, but we could also think like I'm a manager, I'm a boss.
Yeah.
So I would quite like my team who follow me to think of me with a small f as a bit of a fan. They like me.
Yes.
They like what I'm saying. They like what I'm doing. They're going to old school leadership follow like the
support,
but follow like you've got your followers on YouTube, but do they follow? Do they subscribe to me as a person? The question is, should I try to just be myself and put out my thoughts and put out my messages, or should I try to take the kind of leap into their shoes, think about what the fans might want, try to say what they want, try to say what they want to hear? I'm curious, you're mentioning there that sort of through experimentation, sometimes you've hit on incredible stories and gold mines of views. But I'm interested kind of bigger picture in the real world, not just on YouTube. But do you think we should, in our life, try to give the fans what they want? Or do you think we should try to do something authentic and then see what happens from that?
Yeah, well, I suppose the question would be fans of what? I mean, are you talking, for example, about Brentford Football Club? I know you're a massive fan,
big fan
of Brentford. I think you've used a very important word there, which I use as the number one word I use in YouTube: authenticity.
Okay,
and that's what you get from Thogdad, from Thogdad, that's what you get from Thogdad and Thogdad. From those two characters, you will always get authenticity.
And what do you mean by that, authenticity?
It would be very easy for me to, let's say, copy other YouTubers, and let's say, oh yeah, so-and-so did something silly like jumped into a lake and people thought it was hilarious. So, you know what? I'll copy that. I'll jump into a lake. Just as somebody else might think, well, Thogdad said that tastes like promotion.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Yeah. And the whole point about that little moment, and I'll talk you through that the day that I went up to the Reebok Stadium at Bolton, and it was during COVID and we couldn't go inside. We shouldn't really have been there. It was the 45th game of the season, and if we won inside that ground with no fans, we would have been promoted. We were outside, thousands of us, probably shouldn't have been, sorry.
That's all right, we're not worried about that.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone.
And somebody handed me a beer and said, Thogdad, what is that? Because I'm known for my Thogdad beer reviews, and usually I taste a pint and just give an opinion. It's just a vaguely
fun,
amusing bit of fun. And on this occasion, I tasted it and I said, that tastes like promotion. Now, the great thing about that moment, it was just a sort of a vaguely funny moment in time. That's the way I look at it. But somebody was there with a camera, and the folks behind me were your typical Bolton fans who all cheered in unison.
Yeah.
And then, amusingly, we lost that day. So we weren't promoted that day. We were promoted the next week. And that little clip went viral. That has been watched.
Became a meme.
It's become a meme. I've become a meme.
How many views do you think it's got?
I don't know.
Roughly.
On all forums.
In the hundreds of millions, really.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was down in Qatar at the World Cup last year, and an Arabic guy, local guy, in front of me, looked around.
Who probably doesn't drink.
Yes, but looked at his phone, looked at his phone. You're the guy that tastes like promotion guy, and he got a photo with me. And I turned to him and said, do you want a photo with Theo? And
not really,
said,
no.
Who's Theo?
That's amazing.
He didn't know who my son was, but he knew me as the tastes like promotion guy.
I just want to emphasise that, just for Theo, if you're watching. Didn't even know who you were.
That's yeah.
The Thogdad.
Yeah, and that was
a big man.
And that was actually another funny day. It was the first time someone came up to me and said, Thogdad, can I get a photo? And completely ignored Theo.
Yeah.
Oh,
but that's brilliant. I
love that day.
I love that. I think that's what you're saying about authenticity is really important. Yeah. But I also think that does show that we're kind of social animals. We're primed we want to get to know people. We want to be recognised, or we want to be known. And it's interesting when people try to reach out for connection, they're seeking something, but when you're there in person, you can obviously respond, but they're also seeking something from your content.
Yes.
For me as a leader, they're seeking something from me as a boss. If I'm running a big company, if I'm a higher up, people are looking for something from me. And when they get it, it makes them really happy, even if it is just a selfie or a handshake. Or in big companies, when I started my first job, my first day there, I was at the Body Shop, the cosmetics company, and the owner and founder he came round to me on my first day and went, wow. So what do you do here? And I said, I've just started, actually. I'm an intern. I don't really know what I'm doing here. I don't mean what do you do here. I mean, what are you doing now? What are you oh, I'm just looking at some documents for my boss. But she'd made the point to come and find me, or she'd been wandering around at least, noticed that she didn't know me, spoke to me. And you think that's I'm still telling that story 25 years later. But that point of connection can breed that fandom. It breeds that that guy in Qatar. He's going to go back and watch Prem predictions, isn't he? Yes. He's going to be looking. He's going to tell his friends and say, "Oh yeah, I actually was once in a bar I wasn't even sure it was him, and I looked at my phone, and then he looks quite different now. And then
Yeah.
it was him. And I've got this selfie, and then they're looking for that connection.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you another example from way back in the day when I was 21 years old, and I went to some of my first interviews with Big Six. And the sixth interview I had was with KPMG, Pete Marwick McClintock, as it was called in the day. It was in Manchester, in England. And I'd actually had job offers from the other 5. So quite honestly, I'd been out on the beers the night before. This interview was at 11 o'clock. And the guy who was interviewing me, the manager, said, I see you're from Lancaster. Well, we sometimes have training courses in Lancaster. And we always end up in Brooks International, which is a dodgy nightclub. Do you know it? And I said, look, Nigel, I've got to be honest with you.
I was there
6 hours ago. and that was the moment I got the job.
Yeah.
That was the moment. It was no longer an interview. He was like, wow, this guy is genuine.
Yeah.
Could have gone either way.
Yeah, you could have tried to impress him.
Yes.
You could have said, no, just tell me a bit more.
Yeah. But it was a moment of authenticity.
That's authentic. That's honest, and which is completely important in this world. Full stop.
Yeah.
In terms of authenticity, you're obviously an extrovert. That's who you are. You're the
Me?
story. Yes, you are. Yeah.
Whoa.
I hadn't noticed that actually.
Yeah, no, I'm really loud.
Yeah, but that's you, and that's if someone how can I say? Let's say there was a client who you're going to get the contract. If you can be a bit introverted and a bit serious and a bit not who you are, how would you react to that situation?
It was actually a little bit of personal kind of struggle to decide who to be in general on the Sparks podcast.
Right.
Because when I first started the company, I would always smart up, shirt, jacket. I've done that for some of the podcasts. But also I would try to say impressive things.
Yes.
And I would try to say the technically right stuff. And I would try to be really professional demeanor. Yeah. But for this, I don't know whether it's just because Chris and I had done some stuff before, but I found when we're in that space, it was a bit forced and a bit false. But also it's actually quite thin.
Yes.
There's not really a lot of life to parroting out business models or cliched answers.
It doesn't make for deep discussion, does it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make for a deep discussion. So even in this setup, it's not as professional as I might be if I turned up as a client to a client, but it's more real to the discussions that we have around the table in the office, the discussions we have in the car on the way home or when we're traveling. So it's
But in terms of another authenticity, it's a lot of YouTubers are out there, they're wacky. So there's a feeling you've got to be wacky and kind of do this and just be a bit outrageous and do that metaphorical jumping in a lake. That's not me, and it never will be.
It's also not that sustainable, and
it's not sustainable, and people will see through it and say, "Wait a minute, that's just an act."
But you run out. You can if you're the same. Actually, if your romance is defined by big gestures, you will be on a path to bigger and bigger gestures.
Correct.
If your content or your leadership is defined by incredible one-off wonders or jumping in lakes, at some point, where do you go? You will run out. Whereas if you're true to yourself and you've got good authentic content and you keep working at that's something you can do for the rest of your life. You can. I'm imagining a really old Prem predictions, season 45, 2045. Theo will be similar age to what you are now. You'll be in the retirement bracket, but you could still be there saying, are Chelsea going to get in the top half of the table this season? Or, when will Fulham ever score a goal?
When will Tottenham win anything?
But will Brentford win a third Champions League?
Oh, don't do that to me, Chris. That's too much. It's too much. Brentford beat Bolton for the top of the table clash. Who's going to get the top spot this season?
Yeah, could be.
But all of that, the sort of the future, that all comes down to, number one, do people watch it? That is important. If suddenly people decide we don't like Premier League predictions anymore, then there's no point doing it.
But you're going to stop your FPL. You stopped it for a season.
I stopped doing my FPL with fantasy football because I found it too obsessive.
Yeah.
But that's a personal thing. We still have the league.
Yeah.
Theo's league, I think, has 100,000 people playing in it.
Yeah.
And it's still got my name attached to it, and I don't play FPL, but I just found it so obsessive.
I almost gave up because I did one season, and I said to Chris, I put so much time and effort into this. Yeah. It's actually impacting my family life. It's actually impacting my sleep. I'm having to watch every game to try and get all the. So that was a positive obsession in one way, but it was too much.
There's an interesting question there about is there a point where you've become too much of a fan of something and your fandom has gone too far and it's into obsession?
Have you gone into obsession?
Is that a problem?
Well, for me, I mean, I would almost use a sort of, I think it's a psychological, medical definition of obsession. I mean, and that is the idea of bad thoughts, intrusive thoughts getting into your mind and making you anxious. So I would look at sort of OCD, which I did suffer from, have always suffered from throughout my life. And it's not something I would ever... I wouldn't, fandom, obsession, I'd say of two completely different things. Completely
that's amazing.
Different things.
Because I didn't know about your OCD, but I always knew that you knew a lot about football.
Yes, but I think they're
But that's a
very
fandom.
different. So obsession might be, obsessed with washing your hands or checking something or arranging things in the fridge. That is something that's medical and which you should be, taking medical advice about. Whereas, loving Bolton Wanderers or Brentford a bit too much
or Birmingham City, we've got all these.
Is a different thing.
It's still in fandom.
It's a different thing, yes. So I suppose that all comes down to definitions. You could talk about, let's say, addiction. I mean, things like, and we were talking here about...
Do you think you can be addicted to FPL?
Yes.
I could be.
Yes,
I
definitely could be.
I do. I mean, there's lots of forms of addiction. I saw with my son, he used to play the PlayStation addictively. I won't use the word obsessively. Addicted. He would play it too much, where at one point it was affecting his YouTube channel. This is when he was 16, 17.
Yeah.
And he,
what was he playing?
He was playing one of the football games, FIFA. Yeah, he was playing FIFA. And you would, when he lost a game, you would hear the table getting smashed up. We have a table with a hole in it from Theo smashing it. And it got to the point where he came to me and said, "Dad, here's my PS4. I'm done with it. Take it away." Because I've not posted on my YouTube channel for 2. This is when he's 15, 16.
Dad, take my PS4. Bring me a PS5.
But that's that sort of territory of addiction. I think with FPL, it was, for me, it got to the point where it wasn't pleasant anymore because I was good at it. So I was trying to get into the top 10,000 out of 8 million. That's where I was. So,
why were you good at it?
I was good at it because I spent hours every day. I had a spreadsheet for the next 5 weeks predicting, knowing the next 5 games of Tottenham Hotspur.
So KPMG / international businessman goes Excel on FPL. You've got you built your own predictions tool. You've got the whole thing. I
all the fixtures planned out.
And then you've got your WhatsApp groups. And in my WhatsApp groups, mainly a bunch of Scottish lads. And when I did well, oh my goodness, the banter I would give them. But when I did badly, it would almost affect you sleep. You'd be in a bad mood because, Harry Kane had missed a couple of chances, or somebody had got a yellow card, or there'd been a goal.
And it's really silly at that point.
Why am I putting myself through this for what should be a game? So I've given it up, and I'll never go back to it.
Okay, so you made a good line there. I was going to ask you, so we're talking about obsession there, addiction, but I do think you need to have a certain obsession with the craft. And one other aspect, and it's a little bit of a weird one, given that we are sat in front of tons of cameras, but you're really, really good in front of camera.
Thank you.
But your craft as a maker is excellent. How did you build up that skill set? Because that's not about knowledge and stats, or it's not about influence, but that's actually the performer gene.
Yes.
Where's that coming?
And that's a very good question. I mean, we do different types of content. And for example, live streams, I'll start with them because we're going to bring them back, I think, on Tuesday night, which is when you sit down and you watch a game, and for 3 hours, sometimes 6 hours, on one occasion, 9 hours, you're just talking to people. You're watching the game, you're talking about the game, you're not commentating.
Why 9 hours?
Because there was 3 Premier League games in one day during COVID, and we thought, just keep the camera on, just keep the camera on. And hundreds of thousands of people joined us during those 9 hours. So you learn how to just talk into a camera about anything, really, about life, about football. There would be banter with Theo, you'd crack open a few beers. The only way to learn that, let's talk about the 3-hour format, is to do it. There's no other way. You do it the first time. It's probably, if I looked back on the live streams, probably we were rubbish the first time. But by the 20th time, and during COVID, when people were begging for content, you get quite good.
Yeah. And you also, you use devices, what I would call devices as well. So you've got predictions, you've got formats,
yes,
and you've got devices. But what I've noticed in our world, when we're doing business seminars, when we're running workshops, the very, very top people, the reason why they're really, really good is they've got a lot of devices, but you can't necessarily see them. Some of them you can see, but if you go with those really good people and you go to workshop A and then go to workshop B and workshop C. They all seem unique, but actually they're using a lot of devices. And it seems to me also the formats that you use, it helps you because you've got structures.
Yes.
And you've obviously got the games to talk about, but you've got structures. And it'd be very hard if someone said, I'd like you to create 38 really good YouTube videos.
Yes.
But if they said, actually, can you run 38 weeks of predictions? You've immediately got a format and a structure that you can work through, and that helps you. It scaffolds the content somehow.
Yes. I'm thinking back, actually, in my KPMG Credit Suisse First Boston days, maybe I went to a workshop or two, but I can't remember them. I mean, most of what we do has come about, and we've honed our craft through repetition. So Premier League predictions, we've got a certain format. I'm quite good at sort of introducing the games, and the first game is Tottenham Hotspur against Villa, second against that sort of thing. Whereas Theo next to me is then thinking about, well, what shall I say about the Spurs players and the Villa players? And he's got amazing sort of ball knowledge. He's got amazing knowledge about the players.
Do you have it scripted?
Partially.
Loosely.
We always do, and this is what you don't see, we always do our research.
Yeah.
So if it's Premier League predictions, there might be 2 hours of research. So I will go back, I will have watched the 10 games from the last game week. I'll know what the score is, I'll know the scorers, I'll know the league tables, and...
This is the man who's given up FPL.
Yes, yeah. So
I found out that I don't want to unveil this secret live on air, but I found out you've also basically cheated because I've watched back a few in preparation for our time today, and I've realised that the pretty much most common score in football 2-1 is I'm going to say you go for that so many times.
Do you know what?
And then at the end of the season, you're top of the league.
Yes.
But basically, you've also picked out, I'd like to divide it by the amount of times you picked out 2-1 as a score.
But do you know what? 2-1 isn't the most common score. It's 1-0.
1-0,
It's 1-0, as you probably know. And I think the average number of goals per game, and this is the thing about soccer, why it's probably not taken on in the States, there's very few goals. Yeah. It's all about narrow margins. I think there's 2.7 goals per game. Yeah. So on average, you won't see 3 goals.
Yeah.
And some people, if you like your basketball or your baseball, you want to see, American football, you want to see a lot of points.
Loads of points, yeah.
Whereas football, it's all about narrow margins. So if you go out there and say, Man City are going to win 7-0 because they're so much better than Luton, it's going to be wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong, isn't it?
It's less often than you think that somebody wins by 2 or 3 goals. So yes, I do look at the data to some extent. I am more data-driven to some extent. Over the season, I always beat Theo at predictions. I always beat the guest.
Let's say you said you didn't go on them, but if you were coaching a senior executive in a company, they said, I've got to give a short presentation, or actually people have to make videos as well these days and send it to their colleagues. Like, what are some of the sort of presenting tips what would you say makes good video content, or how do you get your message across, or formats?
Well, it totally depends on your audience, because our audience is young. It's 90% male, and sort of the median audience 15 to 25, and they want points delivered really fast. Look into the camera. Harry Kane is going to fail at Bayern Munich. Wow, and that gets clipped, which, by the way, I don't believe. But that's the sort of thing you say. Keep it extreme. You might have seen Rory Jennings went on with my son Theo onto Sky Sports.
Yeah, that's also massive.
And they talked about Erling Haaland, and Rory sort of on Sky Sports Live said, Erling Haaland pretty much is going to be a flop. How can you say he's going to be the top scorer? And Theo was head in hands saying, no, he's going to score 30+ goals. That was the most watched clip in the history of Sky Sports Saturday Social. And it was beautiful. And it was good for Rory, actually. Yeah. And he talks about, people come up to him. He was in a pub recently in Soho.
They say Erling
ordered
Haaland.
His drinks, and the barman's like, come on, after that Erling Haaland thing, I don't want, these are on me. But it was a beautiful thing for both of them. You come out with an opinion, an extreme opinion, you'll get noticed.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between an analyst and a pundit. An analyst is going to say 73% one way, 27% the other. Yes. A pundit, you have to go one end or the other.
You can't sit on the fence, can you?
But that's an example. You've used an example of understanding how to craft your message. You understand what your audience wants. They want a pithy, short, opinionated, headline-style expression, and they want it straight to camera, and they want it delivered down the mic.
Yes.
And it's interesting to think about how you do that then. But that's very different. If you were to do more the analytical side, you have to be slower and more considered, because you've got to consider a whole range of perspectives, right?
Yeah, it totally depends.
I'm sure when you're running a brewery, you didn't use pundit-style thoughts to make your decisions.
No, of course. If you're, in one occasion, actually let's go back to the retailer that I ran for a while. We had a consortium of bankers, and when you've sat in front of those bankers, they could pull the plug on your business. At one point, we had far too much debt, and of course, it's a very, very different measured message that you give to that group of bankers who could
You didn't say, we're going to go to the top of the league. No.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, it completely know your audience.
Know your audience.
Know your audience. And
do you know your audience? I mean, I've been with you when it's actually interesting what you say. When we're together, when we've been at the football, kids are coming up to you. Their parents don't know who you are. But a 15-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid is going, oh, Thogdad, can I have a... But their parents are looking across saying, I have no idea who this guy is. What's going on?
Well, there are outliers. I mean, the other day I was at Charlton Bolton. The game had finished. I was on the Charlton station. We'd won. I think we'd won 4-1. It was absolutely pouring down. An old guy came to me. I thought he was going to ask about the trains, the train timetable. And he's like, oh, I love that. You know, I love your beer reviews. So, and he was mid-70s.
Yeah, okay.
So you get the outliers. But on the whole, like I said, median audience, young and male.
Yeah.
But you do get surprised. What we love, actually, is when someone who's maybe in their 30s, 40s, who comes along and says, you know what, you guys have got good football knowledge. We actually prefer that to when some 15-year-old boy comes up and says, come on, Thogdad, do taste like promotion.
Yeah,
we like to think that we know about football.
But that is the basis of your channel, which is that you do know about football. I think, in my opinion, you know so deeply. I mean, you talk about Theo's knowledge, your knowledge is the same. Not just the Prem, not just the Championship. You're into League One. You know all the players, all the teams. Yeah. Then you go into other leagues, and you also got that knowledge there.
Theo's knowledge is way beyond mine.
It's incredible.
And I mean, yesterday we was with Theo, and I was looking through my DMs on Instagram, and a German guy had written to me. He's a supporter of Red Bull, and he's like, "Can you ask Thogdad who his 3 favourite RB Leipzig players are?" Theo said 1, 2, 3, and I sent that message to him straight off his head.
Yeah,
he knew half the RB Leipzig team. This is not Bayern Munich. This is not Borussia Dortmund. This is the next tier of German football.
Quick question on Theo. Was he good at school? Like, because there's a lot of people who say, you know, it's all about the degree, but Ed Sheeran, not famously. Theo, did he?
Theo was dyslexic.
Yeah.
Is dyslexic. And at the age of 13, we got taken aside by a teacher who said, don't quote me on this, but get your son tested because I don't think he's learned anything from conventional education. Now, this is the thing about Theo. From an early age,
incredibly intelligent, incredibly knowledgeable.
He's very smart, very entertaining, always has been. But he's not the kind of guy. People learn in different ways. And I'm lucky I went through the grammar school. I was good academically. I was good at passing exams. You know, I was in a class with, let's say, 33 boys, the teachers lecturing us. It goes in, I take, because I learn in a conventional way. Theo doesn't. Theo learns best when someone demonstrates something to him, when he's interested in something. There was a headmaster actually at one of his schools who was taking a religious studies lesson, and Theo was looking out the window, and the teacher, the head teacher, who was also the teacher of that lesson, said, Ogden, something interesting outside the window? And Theo said, yes, sir, there's a squirrel on the tree. And that was just an honest answer. And the head teacher reported this to me, to which my reaction was, well, your lesson wasn't very interesting then.
Yeah, a squirrel beat it.
And it may have been a squirrel.
Yes, and that is a point. The reason he's looking out at the squirrel, because that squirrel is more interesting than your lesson.
Well, the squirrel probably was holding a tiny ball.
There you go. There you go.
Or a nut.
Yeah, but the serious point is that people learn in different ways. Yeah. And I'm sure as an educator, as a business, you've got to realise that your employees,
I agree.
Your team are all different.
A lot of our content in our workshops is intellectually relatively simple.
Yeah.
It's a lot about the practice. Yeah. And again, this is interesting. When you think about YouTube, it's actually making good video, making good film requires excellent skills. It's a practice. Presenting is a practice. Editing is a practice.
Yeah.
Script writing is a practice. It's not something that requires, a really high intellect. It's not actually a theoretical thing. And again, like broadcast, you watch the TV, it's not theoretical. It's not about being a good broadcaster in theory. There's a practice, there's an ease.
Yeah.
And that's the skill of the communicator, the raconteur, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, yeah. But look, Theo got his, I said to him, look, you have to stay on and do A-levels. You have to stay on until school, till 18. From a maturity perspective, age 16, he wanted to leave school and go full-time on YouTube. It would have been fine in one respect. But when he was doing his GCSEs, I swear half of them, I could have gone into that exam hall because I spent so much time with him. Yeah, I could have gone in and done those exams.
Don't tell me that. I'm not that good a parent.
No, just because we insisted you will go to do A-levels.
Yeah,
then you're on your own. If you want to faff around, if you want to mess around for those 2 years and fail them, it's up to you. But he didn't. He got that maturity. And he went in, he got like an A star in business studies. He got a B in geography. He got offered a place at, I think, Bath or Bristol. Could have gone to uni. He matured at that point. But age 13, we went to, we had him tested and we were told, look, he's heavily dyslexic. How have you not noticed that?
Yeah.
And I suppose it's to our discredit as parents, but as the school, it just hadn't been noticed. He'd blagged it, got away with it. So I'm now very conscious that, people learn in different ways.
And do you think, coming back to the business angle, I don't want to delve too much into your private finances, but there's a kind of Japanese theory we sometimes use on our programs that if you can find the intersection of what you're good at,
yes,
what you love, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for, then you can find this in Japanese Ikigai. But you can find this real
sweet spot.
You seem to have found that. The business side, monetizing, you're not just running Theo and your own lives. You've got editors, you've got a team, you've got to travel. Tell us about the business side. If we were that side, how much of that is part of the job of being the content creator and being the YouTuber, and how much making all of that work? You've got your sponsorships, endorsements, you've got all kinds of things, media fees. How do you make the business side work?
Well, it's a very interesting theory and a very good question. I mean, certainly with Theo and with my daughter, with Seema, I've always said to them, let's follow your dream. If you can be paid for what you love doing, then
go for it.
And Theo's in this incredible lucky, but he knows he's lucky. I mean, a huge amount of work has gone in, an enormous amount of work.
I don't think he's lucky.
Yeah.
If you think how hard you work,
yes,
I think he may have, when you were doing all that revision, he may have got that from you as well. He works incredibly hard.
Yes.
But also he's very, very consistent and produces a lot of output. And my belief is consistency makes you lucky. I mean, he's very privileged to have a job that he enjoys to do. That's the luck part.
What I'm saying is, I suppose, fortunate to have two supportive parents who've stayed together and helped him through those years. And in the early days, I was, taxi driver and everything. And it wasn't a lot of cost going into that. I mean, as a YouTuber, you've got a phone, you've got a camera. The amount of cost that's gone in is minimal. It's not like Theo becoming an F1, Formula One driver.
Yeah. Do not take your child to drive go-karts.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, son, what about, here's a PS4. Don't go anywhere near that nice shiny go-kart. There's a racing game over here. Yeah. Spend a few hours on that.
Less money.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he had that framework of supportive parents, but also supportive friends. We moved down to London 13 years ago when Theo was, 9? And certainly his classmates here were, when he set up his channel, they were like, Theo, you're good at this. You need to do more. You need to go to Bolton Games, England Games. They sort of slapped him on the back and said, go forward with this. I think if Theo had stayed in, let's say, a state school in East Manchester, you might have your ambition bullied out of you. And I've seen this before. I won't say where it was, but it was a British city. And I met a young person who showed great knowledge of their club and of football in general. Okay, it was in Scotland.
That explains it.
And I said to this young lady, I said, well, your knowledge of football is incredible. Your knowledge of your club is incredible. Why didn't you have a YouTube channel? And she said, well, I did. I did back in the day, but you know what it's like at a school in the city. You get bullied out of it. And that's and I remember that story 6-7 years later. I think that is so sad.
Yeah.
So Theo's fortunate in that respect. But yes, he's put in a huge amount of work. And I always said to him, and occasionally he'd sort of say something like, well, Dad, you went down the chartered accountancy route. I said, Theo, don't go further. Do not think about that route. You won't be happy. You love football. You're an entertainer. You're a natural entertainer.
Yeah. I actually have a bet on that Theo to host Match of the Day inside the next 30 years.
Probably in the running. Yeah.
But I do think that the genre has to make a really good crossover to TV, because the TV executives, they've got to look at who's really good. And that's where the next generation of big TV's talent's going to come from.
Yeah. Now, BBC were talking to Theo pre-COVID. The children, CBBC, I think it was. But then COVID happened and that didn't happen. But yes, I kind of agree with you. I'd love to see Theo do a slightly more mainstream role.
Do you think there's a role, Thogdad, maybe Mastermind or something like that, could be the host of that?
Well, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Special football Mastermind.
My special subject is beers.
Yes.
But that's the sidekick role that you've also got, this kind of more the gravitas. He's the young gun, right?
Theo is, I mean, obviously I've known Theo all his life. He is super creative. He's always been, my wife was an oil painter. She's now an academic. So I think to some extent, Theo gets his creativity from her. He's always been the guy to try and entertain and, drawing pictures and taking his camera out, making videos. So I said to him from a very early age, this is what you love. And if you can make career, I don't like that word. If you can make a living out of doing what you love, then my goodness, do it.
Yeah.
And he has, and he every day he's thankful to God or higher power just for where he is.
And coming back to the business part, do you feel like the focus has to be on making it work financially as a business, or do you think make it work as content and the finances will come? Because I know a lot of people who want to follow their passions, they want to follow their passions, but they've got a mortgage, or they want to follow their passions, but they've got a student loan. So I'm not personally also a believer in, it's a bit like jumping in the lake, but on a financial basis. Yes. I'm not saying, I don't think you should jump into the lake and just say, some people also get into that situation. They kind of throw themselves into a do or die and then find that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, but I'm interested how much you guys sort of think through the business angle and think through how to monetize things, or whether you just keep doing your passion, hope that it works.
Probably less than you think.
Yeah.
Because Theo's been doing this, like I said, for 9 years. I mean, one of the questions I get asked the most, actually the number one question, Celtic or Rangers, believe it or not. The number two question was, okay, some kid will write to you, I want to be a YouTuber. How do I do it? And they want to be Theo, but often they don't want to put in the hard yards. And I always write back to them and say, well, it's hard work and dedication. If you look at Theo's channel, he's made 1,800 videos over the last 9 years, and most of those years were when he was at school. So do the maths. There's a huge amount of work that's gone into that. In fact, you've devoted your life to that. So if you're 13 years old, you want to be a YouTuber, or 23 or 33. The great thing is, I'm 55 and I'm a YouTuber, and I'm delighted that someone of that, era is out there making content. Yeah. There should be more older people doing that. But going back to Theo, I always say that number 1, 2, and 3, hard work, dedication, make a video, make another video every single day. And when let's say the third video flops, make another one. And over time, those numbers, the subscriber numbers will go up. And it might work and it might not. Certainly it won't work from just making one video. Yeah.
Is this one of the misconceptions about YouTubers and content creators, that actually it doesn't take much hard work? You just point and shoot, you upload, and you got lucky?
That is absolutely correct. I meet a lot of YouTubers through, you go out to the World Cup, you go on, let's say, Jack Mate's Happy Hour, all of this. You meet the same people again and again. I'll tell you what these guys have got in common, all the, like Jack Mate and Stevie White and Pieface and Angry Ginge, all of these guys, and Stunt Peg, they're all hardworking people. So to have developed that subscriber base, to have got those numbers, they're out there. They wake up in the morning and think, right, what video can I make today?
And if you were to give Chris and I a bit of advice, I mean, we'd love that. We commit to a process. We've done that. We decided to make an episode every week. Then we decided actually make an episode every other week. So we're probably already on the down spiral. But if you were to give us advice, how could we succeed or go better? We've currently got 273 subscribers, but some of our videos have got 30,000 views. Yeah. So should we just keep going with our format and keep trying to elevate that? Or should we try starting secondary formats as well? Or is it not really about that? Should we go into the algorithms and try and work out which time of day to post things? Or should we try to get celebrity partnerships and get famous people on the podcast? What a great idea, Chris. But obviously there's lots of different strategies. If you said, Theo, which are the top 3 for the was it Romanian footballers? No, it was RB Leipzig.
Yes.
What are your top 3 advices for wannabe celeb YouTubers with a slightly not very followed channel?
Yeah.
Please subscribe.
Yes,
absolutely. We'll send you a box of Mars bars if you subscribe. Yeah. You subscribe, great. Yeah. Ring that bell. What are your top 2 or 3 things? Is it algorithms? Is it content? Is it volume? Is it guests?
Paper promotion? Guests,
It's a bit of everything. I mean, you've made a good start, and you've got some engaging content. Again, it comes back to who are you pitching to? I mean, you're very much sort of business to business, so it's a completely different area, isn't it? What we've found is that the mix of, originally we were just long form videos, So 15 to 20 minutes. It was usually a football vlog, or it might be the Premier League predictions. These days, it's all about YouTube Shorts. It's all about TikTok. It's all about taking, okay, this might be 45 minutes, an hour, but cut it up. You know, if I say something vaguely interesting, cut that. And
why do you think?
Yeah, you'll see that on our LinkedIn.
Why do you think we've got you to say that tastes like promotion about 6 times?
Absolutely. No, but that's what it's all about. People's attention spans seem to be going down. Theo's found that recently. I mean, YouTube Shorts don't make much money, but Theo can easily get 30, 40 million views of his YouTube Shorts just by making 1 or 2 every day, easily.
Wow.
Yes.
30 to 40 million views.
Yes, that's what he did get for a few months, but then there's almost no money there. It's like with TikTok, there's almost no money in it.
So that is the business side. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can be famous, but maybe not make any money.
Yeah.
You can make money, but not be famous. But what you're trying to do, you've got to get the two to balance out.
And it is about balancing it. And I've said to Theo many times, because sometimes you'll put a video out there. I mean, this weekend, Theo did one that didn't really get that many views, but it was different to what he normally does. And it's a learning curve.
Yeah.
And it's a good learning curve. But then occasionally you'll sort of hit the jackpot in terms of numbers. Recently, Theo's audience in North Africa, in the Middle East, in Morocco, in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, it's just sky high. Theo is recognized on the streets of Marrakesh or Doha or Riyadh.
Yeah.
And that is, in terms of geography, he's reached out to new geographies, and he's off to Miami next week to watch Messi play twice. So in many ways, my son is really pushing things. He's doing new content in terms of the geographies that he's going to, the places.
That's
really creative.
It's a very legitimate export. If you're in an import-export business, if you're setting up a consumer brand, you'd say, actually, I think I've saturated what's easy to reach in this marketplace. I'm going to go to North Africa and I'm going to open some stores there. So you're able to do that by building content that connects to those people.
And it's not purely commercial. One of the things I've always said to Theo is if you make a good video and you're happy with that content in terms of quality and what you've done, that's all that matters. If it's watched 50,000 or 500,000 times, it doesn't matter to some extent. If it's a good video, it's a good video. So we did what I thought was a really good video. We have a holiday house in Montenegro, and we did a sort of video down there that the locals adored. And it was, I don't know, it was watched 150,000 times, which is not a lot by Theo's standards. But I said to Theo, it's a good video. You should be happy with that creation of that video.
How long was it roughly?
I think from memory, it was 12 to 15 minutes.
How long does it take you to make a 12 to 15 minute video?
On that occasion, that was an all-day thing.
Whole day?
That was a whole day thing involving 3 people and involving a partner called Porto Montenegro.
And what about the edit afterwards?
That was our editor was actually in the video, a guy called Josh, and he did it. Josh Fusion, yes, great editor. So there's a lot of work goes into a video. I suppose a bit less work might go into Premier League predictions, but my point being, it's not purely driven by the numbers.
Yeah.
At times you've just got to, so for example, we're going to India, I mentioned, for 2 weeks in October, November, and we haven't got a clue how that's going to go. We're going to watch the Indian Soccer League. We're going to go to 5 games in 5 cities. Will those videos be watched 50,000 times, or will it all go mad and the videos will be watched 1 million times? We haven't got a clue. But if the worst comes to the worst, we spent 16 days in an incredible country, father and son and an editor, and we'll have a good time.
It comes back to what you're saying about authentically done,
yes.
hardworking,
yes.
you've gone the hard yards to do it.
Yes.
I do think these are good commercial strategies. So what you're in decision-making theory, what you're doing is called a no regrets bet.
Yes.
So you're doing something which, having invested the time, effort, or money to do, even if nothing happens from it, you're going to be happy that you've done it.
Yeah.
The same, actually, it's interesting hearing you say about making good content. You see, sort of, it always makes me laugh because movie stars and everything else, they seem, it's all just about making a good script. It's just, I read the script and I thought it was great. So it's like, you obviously set out to be an actor. You obviously wanted to be on a stage or in the movies. So you knew you were setting out to try and be famous. But you never talk about that. It's like, is it a good film? Is it a good film? Artists, again, like they're saying, it's not really about the money. But then, hang on a minute. I go to buy those. You said your wife was an artist, but it's never about the money. It's never about the fame.
Yeah.
Well, hang on a minute. Yes, it is. Because you know what? When you say you're really happy when it sells for a good amount, you're really happy when it goes into such a gallery, or you get a good review, you're really happy. So there is actually the social recognition and also maybe the financial. But it's interesting whether you have a regrets strategy and therefore you're doing things that you don't really enjoy to try and make the money,
never,
or whether you get the no regrets bet, you do something that you love, and you can speculate a little bit. And if you're successful, that's great. And if you're not, it doesn't actually matter.
You've got to enjoy what you're doing. That's number one. And you've got to be happy. When you film that, you've got to say, you know what, that's good content. I'm happy putting my name to that. There are occasions when Theo and I, we sit down like this, and we'll start to make a video, and 5 minutes in, either me or Theo will say, right, turn that off. And we'll reach over and we'll turn the camera off, start again. Because we weren't happy. You know, I might say, I'm not at the races today, or Theo might say the same. We're not putting that out. And it might be the slightest of slip, or we might be waffling too much, and we just say, right, cut that, start again.
And how often do you watch back at videos you made?
Once.
And have you ever looked back and think that's just really poor?
Almost never. 1,800 videos. I mean, we just don't have time. It's so fast moving. Yesterday's video is gone. I almost never rewatch some videos.
Do you watch it before it goes out? So you got final editorial control. You just send it to the editors?
No, I don't.
Does Theo?
Theo, we've got. I mean, Josh was a brilliant editor. We've got a new editor, Cassius, who seems to be very good. You do put a lot of trust in your editor. And occasionally something will go out and you're like, wait a minute, there's something was slightly wrong there. But it is a fast-moving game. People don't expect 100% perfection. Sometimes a graphic will go out and I might say, well, I think Tottenham 2, Aston Villa 1, and the graphic will say 2-2. And then 100 kids will be like, we'll point it out. That's the beauty of YouTube. But it doesn't really matter.
When we first started doing this, I watched every single episode multiple times before it went out.
Yeah, so did I.
Comments.
Yes. Yeah.
And then after a while, it's like, actually, it's dead time. It's 90% there.
Yes.
5% isn't really going to make any difference. 5% is just a matter of opinion. Let's just let Sam and the team get on with it.
Yeah.
I feel like we're not going to be upset with what goes out. But like you say, from a kind of process point of view, if we get hooked up on editing and constantly rewatching stuff, then we're not out there doing the next thing. It's a little bit like that in sales, isn't it? You can spend so long wrapping up a deal and then all the admin that goes with it, but your job in sales is to go on and find the next one, maybe pass that on to someone else and get it done, go out and find the next thing.
Stephen, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
I really enjoyed it.
We should wrap up. John, tell us a little bit about how we're inspiring the content of our clients.
Well, it's been interesting. We've touched on loads of different things today. We touched on business skills, presenting, content creation, partnerships, business models, travel. We've covered a whole spectrum. I guess for me, it's really fascinating that YouTube is an incubator for all those skills. But they're all valuable skills in the business world, aren't they? So presenting, creating fans and followers, business models and innovation, finding your passion seemed a big part of what we've covered. And in all the different programs that we run in lots of different ways, we help people to find their passions and to learn the skills that can make them good at them. And that for me is the whole purpose behind learning and development, is understanding who you are and what you enjoy and what you're good at, and then building the craft and the guile to become really good at it, and using that guile to then become commercially successful. And it's amazing to me that whole industry that wasn't around when we started, the whole of TV production can be done by a 14-year-old kid, now 23 or whatever, his dad, Josh, and the three of you can put something together that is commercially really successful, but also has got millions of followers and hundreds of millions of views all over the world, all just from a simple former accountant.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Stephen, thank you. And Jonna, thank you as well.
It's been a pleasure. See you next time, guys. See you soon.
See you.
Thanks for watching this video by Interactive Workshops. Give it a like down below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next video. Click through to here or here to watch another video by Interactive Workshops.